Stand in the center of the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Look at the towering marble columns of the Lincoln Memorial. Look at the dome of the Capitol building. Look at the Latin phrases etched into your pocket change. E pluribus unum. You aren't just looking at America, you're looking at a greatest hits album of human civilization. Thousands of years before the first brick was laid in Jamestown, the blueprints for the American experiment were being drawn in the dust of Mesopotamia, the marble halls of Athens, the rugged forests of Iroquois land, and the strategic minds of Rome. We are the inheritors of a global legacy, a patchwork quilt of genius, failure, and rebirth. This is the story of how the ancient world built the United States. Long before we the people, there had to be the law. In the sun-scorched plains of Mesopotamia, around 1750 BCE, King Hammurabi did something revolutionary. He didn't just make rules, he carved them in stone for everyone to see. This was the birth of due process. The idea that a king couldn't just change his mind on a whim, that there was a standard of justice, is the direct ancestor of the American Constitution. But the spiritual groundwork came from the Levant. The ancient Hebrews introduced a concept that would become the bedrock of American individualism: moral equality. In an era where kings were seen as gods, the Hebrews proposed that every individual was created in the image of the divine and was subject to a moral law higher than any earthly president or monarch. When the founding fathers spoke of unalienable rights granted by a creator, they were channeling a 3,000-year-old Judeo-Christian frequency. If Mesopotamia gave us the law, Athens gave us the voice. In the 5th century BC, a rocky city-state in Greece decided to try a dangerous experiment: democratia, rule by the people. Americans often think we are a direct democracy like Athens, but the founders were actually terrified of it. They called it mob rule. However, we owe Athens the concept of civic duty. The Greeks believed that if you didn't participate in politics, you weren't just private, you were idiots, where we get our word for idiot. They gave us the jury system, the idea of public debate, and the philosophy of Socrates and Aristotle, who taught us that the goal of a government is the flourishing of its citizens. Every time an American casts a ballot or serves on a jury, they are speaking with a Greek accent. If you asked James Madison or Alexander Hamilton who their heroes were, they wouldn't say the Greeks, they would say the Romans. The Roman Republic, before it became a corrupt empire, provided the actual physical and structural layout of the US government. The Senate, even the name, is stolen directly from Rome. Checks and balances. The Romans were the first to split power between consuls, the executive, the Senate, the aristocracy, and the assemblies, the people. The veto, a Latin word meaning I forbid. The American eagle is the Roman eagle. Our architecture is Roman. Our fascination with great men like Cincinnatus, the general who gave up power to return to his farm, defined George Washington's entire public persona. Rome taught America how to be a superpower, but it also stands as a 2,000-year-old warning. Republics die when they trade their liberty for security. Chapter 4. The Magna Carta and the English Seed. We skip forward through the Dark Ages to a muddy field in Runnymede in 1215. The Anglo-Saxon contribution is the hardware of American liberty. When the rebellious barons forced King John to sign the Magna Carta, they established the most important principle in US history: the king is not above the law. This evolved into the English common law. Concepts like habeas corpus, you can't be held in jail without a reason, and the right to a trial by a jury of your peers didn't start in 1776. They were centuries-old English traditions that the colonists felt were their birthright. The American Revolution wasn't fought to create new rights. It was fought to protect ancient ones. While the founders looked across the Atlantic, they also looked at their own backyard. For centuries, the Haudenosaunee Iroquois Confederacy had united 6 distinct nations under a great law of peace. Benjamin Franklin was fascinated by them. He noted that if 6 savage nations, as he called them in the parlance of the time, could form a union that allowed each tribe to handle its own affairs while acting as one for defense, why couldn't the 13 colonies? The Iroquois gave America a living example of federalism, the idea that you can be a New Yorker and an American at the same time. In 1988, the U.S. Senate passed a resolution officially recognizing that the Iroquois Confederacy inspired the U.S. Constitution. Finally, we arrive at the 17th and 18th centuries. The Age of Reason. This was where the ancient ideas of Rome and Greece were filtered through the minds of men like John Locke and Montesquieu. John Locke argued that government is a social contract. If the government stops protecting your life, liberty, and property, you have the right to fire them. Montesquieu looked at the Roman Republic and said, "We need to separate the powers even further: legislative, executive, and judicial." These weren't just theories. They were the final ingredients poured into the American melting pot. The United States is not a new nation. It is an ancient nation built with modern tools. We are the descendants of the Mesopotamian judge, the Athenian voter, the Roman senator, the English rebel, and the Iroquois chief. The Millennia Tale of America is one of continuous evolution. We took the best and sometimes the worst of what humans had learned over 5,000 years and attempted to build a more perfect union. The groundwork is thousands of years old, but the building is still under construction. The question for us today is, what will we leave behind for the civilizations of the next millennium?